The Western world has been lying to you about Malaysia, not subtly, not accidentally, consistently and completely. While you were being fed images of jungle and poverty and backwardness, Malaysia was building infrastructure that puts London to shame, healthcare that outperforms the American system, a food culture so advanced it makes Paris look one-dimensional, and nobody told you why. Because admitting that a Muslim-majority Southeast Asian country is quietly outperforming the West on multiple dimensions of daily life does not fit the narrative that certain parts of the world have been selling for a very long time. So let me tell you what they left out, and I promise you, by the time this video ends you are going to be angry that nobody showed you this sooner. If you are new here, welcome to Unseen Tier. We say the things the mainstream travel content does not have the courage to say. Subscribe right now and hit the notification bell. New documentary every week. Let us go. Here is how deep the ignorance actually runs. Someone asked me recently in complete seriousness whether Malaysians live in trees, a real person, an adult, with a smartphone and internet access and presumably the ability to use both. And before you laugh, understand something. This person is not an anomaly. This is what happens when the global media decides a country does not deserve serious coverage. When Southeast Asia gets treated as one undifferentiated block of poverty and beach resorts, and nothing in between. But here is what makes this genuinely outrageous. While that person was imagining tree houses, Malaysia was operating one of the most efficient airport rail links in Asia. While Western cities were debating whether they could afford to fix their infrastructure, Malaysia was delivering transit projects on time and under budget. While London commuters were paying through the nose for a train that arrives late, Kuala Lumpur commuters were crossing the city in air-conditioned comfort for less than $2. This is not a developing country story. This is a developed infrastructure story that the world simply refused to tell, and that refusal has consequences. Now pay close attention here because this is where most people completely miss the point. The KLIA Express connects Kuala Lumpur city centre to its international airport in 28 minutes flat, 28 minutes. The Heathrow Express in London, connecting one of the wealthiest cities on earth to its main airport, takes longer and costs significantly more. In a country with a GDP per capita several times higher than Malaysia, let that land for a second, but it does not stop there. Because here is the part that really should make Western urban planners uncomfortable. The broader Kuala Lumpur rail network, multiple integrated lines, clean stations, functional ticketing, reliable schedules, was built and expanded while Western cities were still commissioning feasibility studies for projects that have still not broken ground. Penang has a developed, distinct urban identity. Johor Bahru is growing at a pace that surprises everyone who visits for the first time. Kota Kinabalu puts you in a modern functioning city with an international airport within an hour's drive of one of the oldest rainforests on Earth. This is not one impressive city surrounded by nothing. This is a country that built serious urban infrastructure at multiple points simultaneously, and the cost of living inside all of this, dramatically, embarrassingly lower than what equivalent infrastructure costs in Australia, Singapore, or the United Kingdom. That combination does not happen by accident. It happens when a government decides that infrastructure exists to serve people, not to generate headlines. Subscribe to Unseen Tier right now if this is already changing how you see this country. Hit the notification bell. We do this every single week. Now I need to tell you about the food, because this is where the Western assumption collapses completely. Most people think of Malaysian food as a regional Southeast Asian cuisine. Nice but not world-class. Interesting but not sophisticated. Wrong, completely wrong, and here is why. Malaysia is not home to one food tradition. It is home to several fully developed, centuries-old culinary traditions operating simultaneously in the same cities, the same streets, sometimes the same building, Malay cuisine. Multiple regional Chinese traditions, Cantonese, Hokkien, Hakka, each with its own distinct identity. Tamil and North Indian and Mamak traditions that have been evolving in this specific geography for generations. Nyonya cuisine, a fusion that emerged from the Peranakan community and exists in its authentic form nowhere else on Earth. Sabahan and Sarawakian indigenous food traditions that most of the world has not even heard of yet, all of it real, none of it performed for tourists. A full serious meal from any one of these traditions costs what a mediocre airport sandwich costs in London. But here is the thing most people miss. The food is extraordinary not just because of the variety. It is extraordinary because each tradition is maintained by the communities that own it. You are not eating an adaptation. You are eating the original, cooked by people whose grandparents cooked the same dish the same way. That is a level of culinary authenticity that Paris and Tokyo and New York spend billions of marketing dollars trying to claim. Malaysia just has it, quietly, without the press release. Here is something nobody in mainstream travel content wants to say out loud. Multiculturalism is failing in most of the Western world. Societies that spent decades congratulating themselves on their diversity are fracturing, politically, socially, culturally. The experiment is under serious pressure in ways that would have seemed unimaginable 20 years ago. And while all of that is happening, Malaysia has been running a version of genuine multiculturalism for centuries, not as a policy, not as a marketing position, as the actual operating reality of daily life. Colleagues switching between Malay, English, and Cantonese mid-sentence without pausing. The neighborhood where a mosque, a temple, a church, and a Hindu shrine all sit within walking distance, and nobody thinks this is unusual. The festival calendar that gives the whole country reasons to celebrate from multiple traditions across the year, regardless of personal background. Living in Malaysia means living inside a social fabric that most Western societies have lost and are now desperately trying to rebuild. And Malaysia got here not by engineering it, but by living it. Through tensions that are real and ongoing, through a process of coexistence that is messy and complicated and still somehow functional in ways that the tidy diversity frameworks of Western institutions are not. That is worth paying attention to. But here is the part of this story that nobody is telling, and this is the twist. Over-tourism is destroying the world's most beloved destinations in real time. Bali is choking on it. Thailand is watching its most iconic places get hollowed out by the sheer weight of visitors. The Greek islands are pricing out the communities that made them worth visiting in the first place. Barcelona has residents protesting in the streets against tourists. The pattern is the same everywhere. Visitors arrive, prices rise, locals leave. The authenticity that attracted the visitors disappears. What remains is a theme park version of the place that used to exist. And here is what makes Malaysia genuinely unusual right now. 42 million people visited Malaysia last year. 42 million. That is a number that should be triggering the same destruction we are seeing everywhere else. But the Mamak stall is still for locals. The hawker centre has not been themed for Instagram. The neighbourhoods that make Kuala Lumpur interesting have not been converted into boutique hotel districts at the rate that kills cities elsewhere. The identity is holding. How? Why? When everywhere else it collapses under this kind of pressure, that is the question worth asking. And here is the answer. Malaysia never built its identity around being visited. It built its identity around being lived in. The food is cheap because Malaysians need it to be cheap, not because tourists find it charming. The public transport works because Malaysians use it every day, not because it is a tourist attraction. The festivals are genuine because the communities they belong to are still present, still practicing, still passing them forward. The visitor arrives into something that exists completely independently of their arrival, and that independence is exactly what makes it worth arriving for. Expat life in Malaysia is not about escaping into a paradise built for your comfort. It is about integrating into a place that has its own complete identity, its own internal logic, its own reasons for being what it is that has nothing to do with your presence. And you are welcome inside it, not because the tourism board says so. Because that is genuinely how the culture operates. That is extraordinarily rare, and the people who have found it know it, which is why they keep coming back, which is why 42 million people showed up last year, which is why the number keeps growing. The world built a story about Malaysia that has almost nothing to do with Malaysia, and the most controversial thing I can tell you is this. The countries that built that story had reasons to build it. Economic reasons, political reasons, the kind of reasons that do not get stated out loud, but shape what gets covered and what gets ignored, and who gets to be seen as developed, and who gets kept in the category of somewhere you pass through on the way to somewhere else. Malaysia was kept in that category for a long time. It is not staying there. And the 42 million people who showed up last year, and the expats building lives there, and the investors paying close attention to what is being built, they already know something the mainstream narrative has not caught up to yet. This country is not behind. It never was. It was just invisible to people who were not looking. What is the most outrageous assumption you have heard someone make about Malaysia? Drop it in the comments right now. The worse the better, because the gap between the assumption and the reality is exactly what this channel exists to close. And if this video made you angry that nobody showed you this sooner, good. That means it did its job. Share it with someone who still has the wrong picture. They need to see this. Subscribe to Unseen Tier right now. Hit the notification bell. Every single week we find another country the world has been getting wrong, and we tell the story the way it deserves to be told. Subscribe right now, before the next one drops without you.